Welcome to CarePOD, a safe place to educate, inspire, and renew the caregiver. Listen in with our host, Dr. Kiplee Bell, as she interviews different experts along the caregiving journey.
So I'm here with a dear friend, wow, my college friend. What's going on? So I'm
It's so
here with, yes, good to see you. Good to just be with you. Listen, the podcast, the CarePod, we sit, we speak with thought leaders and people that I have respect for. So I get overly joyed and excited when I'm here with not only a friend, but someone that I have respect for. So Dr. Angelle Richardson that I'm here with today. And what's exciting is that we were laughing offline before we came online that you just pretty much turn around and then here's your life and you're fully woman and fully doing all the things. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so honored.
Yes, yes. Okay, so Dr. Richardson is this powerhouse in education, a thought leader in her own right, and really, forms our young minds, right? And integrates families. I just am really awe-inspired, truly, knowing, your background in adoption, your own family journeys, and then now how you come into this space to help people navigate their own space. So I brought her here to kind of, let's talk about that, right? Because I think now we're here in this space where families are finding themselves having to define what care looks like for them. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, all the things.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's so funny because like when you reached out to me, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm actually in this space right now. Myself in a really in a way I didn't expect, but let me back up a little bit. So, I'm now in education, teaching in academia, and I've been a therapist for, oh my gosh, what, 15 years now. I started, of course, like wanting to be a journalist and I wanted to be this writer and all these other things. And then like life happens, right? And so, you brought up the piece of adoption. I myself am adopted. And I decided, like, once I had met my biological family, I wanted to go into family therapy, and have been working as a therapist for a number of years. And then decided, like, okay, let me now start being a professor and training the next generation of therapists. So I'm in academia, I'm a department chair at a university, and
I love
really
it.
wanting to like help this new generation become the therapist that we should be. Um, but then in my personal life, I've been a caregiver. I had custody of my great nieces on and off for 7 years. They are now with their mother again. But then on this end of it now, um, I have an uncle who is 81, about to be 82, and he himself was a caregiver for my aunt, his wife, for a number of years. She had dementia, and then she has now passed 2.5 years ago. But during that process, he contacted me because we're very close, and said, I need to text you every day because she won't be able to call anybody. If something happened, and then since she's passed, I am the person that he reaches out to every day. But we live in
Wow.
states. And unfortunately, within the last few months, he's had a health crisis. And so being in this space of really looking at what does that look like to be in this space where I am the one that has been kind of navigating this thing from literally 14 hours by car away. And then figuring out what does that mean, but also recognizing like I've been working with clients who are navigating this and really being like, oh, this is how you can do this. This is how I can support you. But I think it becomes really real. And I've realized this like when I've worked with parents, right? And then I was raising, my nieces for a while, like, oh, wow, it's really different when you experience it as a parent, right? When you're like the caregiver of children and you're like, oh, wait, let me shift. I work with you because now I'm living it. But then as a caregiver in this space, it shifts when you're like, "Oh, wait, no, I have to think about how my life is and how I'm now a caregiver of this person who literally bought me my first dollhouse, right? And
Wow, yeah.
were at college would come to visit me on campus and take me out and like, let's do lunch and let me do this and gave me advice on cars and all of these things. And now I'm the one that's kind of like, did you go to the doctor? What did the doctor say? And, over Thanksgiving was taking him to the doctor and checking up on all of these things. And so it really shifts how we see things in the work that we do when it affects us personally. And I think it's all a blessing and a journey, but I think it's also really changes our perspective when we have to live it.
That is so poignant because it's really the root of my why for impactful caregiving, frankly, because I thought, wow, I'm in the know, but I am, you know, oftentimes, more often than not, irritable, frustrated, exasperated by the systems, right? That are supposed to be designed to help people that aren't. And so,
Mhm.
what does someone do that doesn't have that one to advocate for them? So important. There's a few things that you said though that were really telling, especially in this day and age of, okay, so now therapy is pop culture, right? So now it's cool to say, you know what, yeah, I have a therapist. you know yes, now I am free to discuss what ails me, right? So that's now a cool thing. um I really think, at a time when you said, you know what, I need to recognize, did this adoptive process, give me issues? And now, I've sought my biologic family and I want to do the work, with them. That is so powerful. Do you find that, like in my space, I find I do have a pocket of patients that they just want to take the cholesterol pill. Like they want to have cheesesteaks every day, but,
Right.
as long as there's a statin available, okay. So, do you find that people are prepared? Do you feel that we're prepared to do the work of therapy in our families?
So I think what's really interesting is that I get a lot of individuals coming to me about their families. I don't get a lot of families coming to do family work. And not that I don't, like I'm a family therapist, right? So I get families, but I get more individuals coming to me about their families, right? Um,
Interesting.
and it's interesting how different things work. So I will get absolutely adoptive parents that come to me and go, I just adopted this child, or I have a child who I adopted several years ago, and I'm recognizing that things are showing up. We want to, be the best adoptive parents we can be, right? And so, of course, they want to do the work. They want to make sure this child is ready and prepared and all of that. But more than not, I get individuals that are like, I'm adopted and I'm having, I'm struggling with this thing and I want to do the work, right? And more than likely, they're adults that have lived their whole lives with all this stuff. And now it's showing up. And it's like, I can't,
Mm,
right? So I think it's like with you,
mm.
it's like, oh, my levels are so high.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
I got this blood test back and crazy. I have to do something now.
Yes, yes, yes,
No.
yes, 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 yes.
So I don't think that for a lot of us, even though therapy is not as stigmatized as it was, and I'm still, there's still a stigma a lot of times around therapy, but I think it's not as stigmatized as it was. But I think, especially with, you can go on TikTok and you can watch people that are just like, this is what you should do. Oh, and not
Mhm, mhm.
because I do think that it's a great avenue to, get more awareness out there, and I think it has its place, but I think you still need to do the work for people that really need to have trauma and all of these things addressed. You can't go and look at an app to get that addressed, and for some people, that's scary, right? Just like
Mhm.
your blood test and realizing, like,
Something's
something
wrong.
is going on.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Welcome to Impactful Caregiving, where we believe that compassionate care begins with education and empowerment. Impactful Care is more than just a CME accredited online course instruction. It's a philosophy, a commitment to equipping clinicians at the bedside with the knowledge and skills to provide the best care for the older adult person. We believe that when clinicians are educated, they become empowered to not only care for the patients they serve, but also to partner with and empower their colleagues and patient families. Impactful Caregiving recognizes that behind every patient is a grandparent, a spouse, a loved one, a person who means the world to their own family. Through our one-on-one consultations, Impactful Caregiving empowers the layman caregiver and their family to begin important conversations and plan for their aging chapter. Our commitment doesn't end there. We also serve corporate clients who seek customized medical training for their staff, as well as consultations for aging accommodation and staff education in various sectors of business, travel, and hospitality. Whether you're a clinician caregiver dedicated to improving patient outcomes, or a corporate client striving to provide exceptional care experiences, we invite you to partner with us. Together, let's make an impact in the lives of older adults and their families. We can redefine what age looks like as impactful caregivers.
Something's wrong. Yeah. Tell me about, I often think about my own children and their exposure to their aging grandmother. And, really the pressure that they see me go through as their mother caregiving, but also the pressure that they may be internalizing on the imposition of age, right? And how frailty and and the vulnerability of age affects a person. Do you feel that that can be traumatic for kids, or what are your thoughts on that in terms of, I guess, troubleshooting or being proactive in conversations in multi-generational families?
Yeah, I think it's important that there's this communication about what's going on, right? For example, my uncle, like I said, he's had some health issues over the last year. So one of the challenges was he literally passed out on Christmas at Christmas brunch. Um, and my cousin has two children, right? One of them's in middle school, one of them's in college. But um, my little cousin, who is my uncle's granddaughter, saw her grandfather pass out in front of her on Christmas, right? And so that's scary for a child, right? And my
Yeah.
uncle felt guilty because he's like, "Oh my goodness, my granddaughter was crying because she saw me pass out." And it's like, well, of course, right? She's scared. But the other piece of that is having this conversation with her around what's going on with grandpa. Of course, letting her know, like, as he ages, yes, there's things that are gonna happen, possibly, but also letting her know what that looks like now. What we found out at that point was, like, he has AFib and, right, what can we do about it? Does he need to go to the doctor? How can we because if we are letting children know what's happening and what this process looks like, then they can be aware. The other piece of it is children by nature are egocentric. And why wouldn't they be? When they cry, we give them a bottle or we change their diaper, or we do whatever. And if we don't tell them what's going on, then they make up their own story. And often the story involves them, right? What did I do to
Mm,
get upset at him? Did I make him angry? Did I not say hello?
mm,
Right? So keeping the community
mm,
open prepares them and lets them know, like, this is what's going on, right? This is part of the aging process. And also, you don't have to be afraid that you're going to pass out one day because this is not part of your age group. You're 10 or 11, you're not going to have AFib, right? So, again, the part of it is explaining, but the other piece of this is emotions, right? Do we teach children how to talk about their emotions? Because if you're tired, hungry, frustrated, you may be grouchy too, right? Just like
yeah.
tired, hungry, frustrated because she's carrying all this. So she's going to be grouchy. So it's really important to have all these conversations about what's going on, about the emotions that may show up, about how we respond to emotions, and that it's okay.
Yeah, that is really, really important because even when I sit with families myself, kind of navigating the caregiver role. So, who can stand the sight of blood, who's the accountant, who's going to be the primary family liaison, et cetera, really having the conversation on, have you brought, are there children in this kind of multi-generational environment? And have you had this conversation? So, yeah, that's really, really important. So, you mentioned that you now are kind of on this cusp of changing, or not changing, or I should say, molding the young minds of the future, right? Um, what does that look like? I often think, like, wow, when we were in college, like, there were no shortcuts. There wasn't all of this technology or chat GPT or just look up this and, get an answer, and the social media aspect. So how do you prepare your students for this generation?
Yeah, I think so for me, it's really about having them be engaged in their learning. I really enjoy it. I do. But I do think back to how it was when we were in school and how it really has changed. And so I really make my classrooms really engaging and making sure that what we're doing is that they are in the class, they have to do class presentations, that I'm walking around the room, I'm not just lecturing, like, we're doing all of these things, I'm using movie clips, and like, "Okay, how would you do therapy on that family? How would you do therapy on that couple? How would you do therapy on that individual?" Right? I'm giving you information, but you have to do a teach back, right? Next week, they actually have to do class demonstrations of therapy techniques. So everything in my classes is experiential, right? I want them to get the experience of doing therapy before they have to go out and do therapy. Because one of the
Mm,
things so important is I don't know so much that we're dealing with people who I don't want to say that they're much different than how we were, but I think the issues are coming to the surface more, right? So I
yeah,
don't
they're heavier.
they're heavier, right? And I
They're
don't want
heavier.
them to go
Yes.
out unprepared, right? And so I feel like they need to be prepared in the classroom, and I need to know that they're prepared in the classroom, and I don't want them to go out there feeling like, "Oh, Dr. Richardson didn't prepare me, or she didn't give me the opportunity to practice here." So my classrooms are absolutely the places that they can practice, and they can ask anything. So I ask tons of questions and then they're quiet. And I'm like, there's no wrong answer. Like, and I mean it, ask the question. And one of the things I say back is like, you can challenge me, right? You can give me feedback. You can tell me, like, you don't agree with what I just said, and we can have a discussion. And I think the classroom has to be the place where that happens before they go out into the real world because people in the real world, when they're coming to therapy, hurt people are coming in there. So they're not always going to be kind. They're not always going to be nice. They're not always going to give you a second chance. So you have to try it out in my room before you go out there.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I don't think it's an age thing. Like, I remember coming out of school and kind of worrying if I would be received as a woman of color, received as a young woman, you
Mhm.
know, treating people decades older than myself. Like, would they receive me? And there is something to be said about preparation, right? Because you're prepared, the excellence is received
Yes.
first.
Yeah.
The excellence goes before you. So yeah, so important.
Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
would you say to the busy professional? I think that's definitely a core group here. Those of us that are these busy professionals doing all the things, but we're worried about mom and pops and unks and aunts and them, right? So, what are your tips in that regard? Kind of, if you find yourself in that caregiver role, to seek therapy now, or what's your thoughts, especially as you said you've gone through this experience with your uncle that's made you realize, hey, you know what, the writing's on the wall here.
Yeah. So I think one thing is absolutely get support, right? Whether you feel like you need therapy as support, or if you feel like you need to like have the other people help you with this role. But I think absolutely find the support that you need. But my biggest thing is also give yourself grace, right? You may not be able to do everything. And so, you're working, you might be taking care of kids, you may have a partner, right? Doing all of these things and then caregiving, it takes a lot. So give yourself grace if you can't do everything every day, or if you can't be all things to all people, give yourself grace. I think the other piece is, you know, having a schedule. That can be so helpful because like this has to be done, that has to be done, that has to be done. So being able to put out a schedule or give yourself a schedule so like, okay, I can do this today or I have to do that tomorrow, right? And really figuring out when you're gonna take the breaks. It's so important to take a break. You can't keep going, 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 going. That's going to lead to burnout. So figuring out when are you actually going to take a break and take some time for self-care, and realizing self-care doesn't have to be this huge, like, oh, I'm going to like go on
We're going
vacation.
to Turks and Caicos. Yeah. I
So I
get
think
that.
those
I
are
get
some
that.
important things. Yeah.
Mhm. How does the therapist detach? You know, like I, I have to say, looking back over my career, the patients, they stay with me, right? But I would say like the bad stuff stays with me. Like I
Right.
had a really bad young code last week, 50 something pass away. So that's, having to go and speak with the family and all of this, seeing the wife and the two children, those kinds of things stay with you for a time, right? But, the stuff,
Right.
how does the therapist detach from that?
My weekends are spent on my sofa with my dog. I have a Labradoodle. I love her. She's the best thing ever. And we lay on the sofa and we watch TV. Like, I have to like just detox on the weekends. And like the last 2 weekends, I've had to do things. And I'm like, this weekend, I'm not doing anything because I have to literally just be on my sofa, just watching TV and not doing anything else. Right. I have to
Mhm.
time out just to not do anything. And it's funny because like I have neighbors that are like very kind and very sweet. And they're like, you should come out with us. You should do this. You're always home. And I'm like, "Well."
The whole introvert extrovert thing. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me, do you do any remote sessions?
Yes.
Yeah, so tell our audience how they can connect with you, the specific offerings you have, if you have a website, these kinds of things.
So I do remote sessions because I'm licensed in Pennsylvania and I don't live in Pennsylvania at this time. So I am on LinkedIn and I am on goodness gracious, Psychology Today. Of course, you forget that. So yeah, so I can be found on Psychology Today, and then I do mostly just individual, some family sessions, but mostly individual sessions because all of my sessions are remote.
Beautiful. Okay. So they just search Dr. Angelle Richardson on Psychology Today to connect with you. Awesome. So any parting words for our audience?
So I think the biggest thing is just, remember you're not alone in this. I think there is, a whole community out here trying to make sure that we get it right and really give yourself grace while you're going through this. And I think part of it is just you're doing the best you can with what you have. Always remember that. And one day at
Absolutely.
a time. One day
One
at a time.
day at a time. One day at a time. Well, I'm so glad you hopped in with me today. Love
Thank you so
it.
much for having me. This was
Thank
wonderful.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Great information right from the source. For more information on how to caregive like a boss, check out impactfulcaregiving.com. Want to be a guest on the show? Contact us at CarePOD at impactfulcaregiving.com.